Hello friends, and welcome to Ariel's Twilight Years, how to be a really old model. This month I'm taking you on a different kind of tour with me. Not a modelling tour, but a property investment tour. A few years ago I realised that I didn't dare have a pension because I know too many people who've been screwed over by pension companies. And I didn't have any kind of provision for my future except for the flat that I bought to live in when I was 29, which I still own and rent out. And I realised probably the best thing for me to secure my future would be to buy more property, because I am in a physical job, and while once upon a time I thought my job might finish when I was in my 30s or 40s because of how I would look and how my fan base would be responding, I now realise actually as you get older you just get a different fan base, which is lovely. But nevertheless, I might not be physically capable of doing my job on camera for the next 20 years. And so I needed to make some kind of provision for my retirement. Although I don't want to retire, I want to be able to retire. So I made a plan back in 2016 to purchase 10 properties over the years while I was still modelling, because I hope, if I've done my maths correctly, that will secure an income for me of around £50,000 a year, which will go up as time goes on because rents rise as salaries rise. And I think from talking to some retired people, that sounds like a reasonable amount of money to retire on. It does mean I need to choose my properties carefully. I can't just buy any old property, and I did decide that it was safer for me to purchase property in lots of different areas in case one area underperforms or people stop wanting to rent there. So I try to be quite ambitious with myself by purchasing in different areas of the country every time I buy. What I buy is generally 2 or 3 bedroom properties, and traditionally I've bought leasehold properties, which in England and Wales would tend to be flats or apartments, because if you buy a leasehold property, there are some pros and cons to these, but essentially you pay a management fee to a company that's in charge of the building, so that if simple things go wrong with the building, they get solved for you instead of you personally having to go and figure it out how to do it yourself. So if the roof needs repairs, for example, the management fee that you pay each year should cover a lot of those repairs. So it's a little bit more predictable than buying a freehold house, for example, where any repairs that have to be made come out of your income. Of course, you don't have the annual charges, so it's very much swings and roundabouts, but because I do not have a whole load of practical skills, in fact I have basically no practical skills when it comes to house building, it seems like a safer option for me, because I have to be quite a hands-off landlord because I live nowhere near these properties. I do have managers for all of the properties, so there's a letting agent who deals with the day-to-day running of the flats, because again I'm not local, and also I am not the person to call at midnight if your plumbing starts leaking or if your electrics go out. I don't know how to fix that. Even in my own house I don't know how to fix that. So I am just off tomorrow to start searching for my 7th property. I've got 7 properties to view, although probably 1 or 2 of them will have had an offer accepted by the time I actually get to view them. And I am going up to the far north of England, near to Newcastle upon Tyne, to buy a property that will be somewhere between £75,000 and £110,000. The last time I personally was renting long term was when I was 29, and I remember that period of my life very vividly. And what I always try to do is to buy property that 29-year-old me would have loved to live in, because I think it stops me from buying the cheapest thing that I can find on the market. It essentially stops me from moving anywhere towards being a slum landlord, because I know what was important to 29-year-old me. I wanted to feel safe, I wanted to be in a neighbourhood that felt safe, I wanted to be in a property that was in good condition, that wasn't leaking, and that didn't have a gas boiler that was about to explode. All of this stuff was important to me, and so I want to buy stuff where I can give a decent service to my tenants. I'm organising property viewings for myself, and I'm viewing next week, so I'm going up for 4 days. Oh my god, it's one of the favourite things in my whole life. It's one of my just favourite things to do. I'm not quite sure why. I guess it's so different from my normal job. So at the moment I'm just searching Rightmove. I've got a short list of properties I would like to view, and I'm just phoning agents to register who I am, what my budget is, and to try to secure viewings. So I'm taking you with me. I found a little 2-bedroom house. I'm trying to buy a 3-bed, but there's not very many within my price range, so the ones that there are, they'll probably have some stuff wrong with them. So I can either buy a 3-bed with some issues to deal with, which is not necessarily a bad thing, or a two-bed that is much more likely to be in very good condition. So I think I want to view some of both just to make sure I have options. I have dyscalculia, so putting numbers in my phone, for example, is incredibly hard, and I just check numbers really carefully. Hello, my name's I'm a property investor who's visiting the area next week, and you have a property on Rightmove I'd be interested in viewing if it's still available, please. It's on the market at 85,000. I'll probably be doing cash. It's to rent out. I am coming up on the 20th, but I've got some bookings already. That would be brilliant. Thank you very much. Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. My favourite thing is when I started doing this, I always needed a mortgage because I didn't have a particularly big income. I was sort of putting half of the money I earned aside every year to buy property, and it was really a squeeze to do it. But as my modelling career has become more successful, I can buy in cash, and it's so nice because you know if you're a cash buyer who's buying stuff with nothing to sell, you are solving problems for estate agents every time you phone them up. You are someone they want to hear from because you're someone in a really good position to get the chains moving, because you'll be the bottom of the chain. And so I really like being able to kind of deliver good news that I am going to hopefully be some help to them. Gosh, I really love it. I think it's because I'm submissive. I like it makes me feel helpful, but it also makes me feel quite powerful, and I like both of those feelings. Anyway, so now I've got 6 bookings. I've got 3 days for those bookings. I think that's probably enough. What will probably happen is some of this property will sell before I get to view it next week. So I've got some property in reserve, which I will try to view. If I realise I've only got 4 bookings left or something, I will add some additional ones just to make sure I've got plenty of choice. One thing that a lot of people get hung up on with property investment, especially when they're new, is they spend a lot of time searching for the perfect property. And I've realised, at least for me, I've got very limited time to do this. I cannot be taking time out of my normal job to do this very often, so it's better for me to buy something that is good enough and get it done rather than wait around unduly for the perfect thing to come along. So I had a property purchase fall through earlier this year, and I'm just determined to buy something decent this year, because to keep myself on track I need to be quite efficient. I can't keep taking days at a time to go and view properties. I sometimes have to drive quite far, so this is a really long way from where I live, but that makes it extra exciting and an extra big adventure. So I will update you with more when I am at the next stage of this process. It's an interesting thing because sometimes when I talk about property investment, I realise that there are a decent proportion of people in the Western world who think that purchasing property to let out is unethical. And honestly, I somewhat agree. Once upon a time in the UK, we had a lot of social housing, and during the 1980s, the Conservative government sold a lot of it off. So now, if you want social housing, I believe there is just a hideously long waiting list in many areas across the UK. So there's an oversupply of people who need property to rent, who cannot afford to buy yet, and private landlords have taken up the slack for people who can't yet at least afford to buy their own house. So I feel as though as long as I'm providing good quality accommodation and I'm behaving ethically in terms of rent rises, which is something I do very much try to do, I think probably what I'm doing is okay. Ideally, we would have a society with a lot more social housing, and then I wouldn't be able to be a landlord, and I would be fine with that because I'd rather live in a country that had decent provision for housing. Our country doesn't, and when it's young people who haven't purchased property yet who speak out about landlords and property investors, I have a lot of sympathy. Sadly, the average savings for under 45-year-old in this country, the average is less than £10,000, which isn't enough for a deposit for anything in vast swathes of the UK, especially the southeast. So I do think, having been someone who needed to rent all the way through my 20s, there will always be a requirement for people to rent property, because after all, a lot of people in their 20s haven't really settled down into a particular area yet. Their job might be moving them around, and so renting relatively short term in various cities or towns across the UK before you finally decide where you want to be more permanently, it seems like something that people are going to want to do for a long time, and renting is more flexible than buying a property in that case. Certainly it was useful for me in my 20s when I was an actor and I just didn't know where the work was next going to take me. But when older people, maybe people with pension plans, tell me that they don't agree with being a landlord on an ethical basis, I want to tell them that pension funds over the last few years have been investing heavily in the build-to-rent sector. So actually, if you have a pension, there is a very good chance the fund your pension will come out of is actually investing very heavily in building properties specifically to rent. Now, those properties will never be available for any owner-occupier in the future. It will never be possible to buy one of those units. They will always belong to the pension companies. And I think over the next 10 or 20 years, we'll probably see individual landlords squeezed out of the market because there will be a greater and greater supply of these, probably like big blocks of apartments with very good facilities where you can rent, but that's all you can do. And so actually, these days, by having a pension in the UK, you're very likely to be funding more property that, unlike the property I buy to rent out, will never be available for an owner-occupier. In the future, I hope that the properties I'm buying now will be purchased again from me by an owner-occupier, but these big blocks that are being built now will never be available for those people, will never be part of the circle of housing purchases. But it still does worry me. And so one of the things I have always promised myself that I will do, and so far I've always succeeded in doing this, is that when I'm looking for property, like I will be this week, I will not compete with any prospective owner-occupiers. So what I tend to do is I view property that's been on the market for some time. So any owner-occupiers in the area who've been looking, if they were interested, they probably have made an offer already. I will tend to purchase things that either need some work done on them or they need some legal problem solved, like a probate sale, for example, because those things tend to be less attractive to prospective owner-occupiers. And if I view a property that I'm interested in and then discover there is an owner-occupier who's also interested in making an offer, I just always tell the agent that they should accept the owner-occupier's offer and to come back to me if that sale falls through, because I never want to be in a position of stopping someone who's trying to buy a house to live in themselves. I never want to be the person who stops that from happening, because that's a really important thing to be able to do in your life, and I never want to be the reason someone can't achieve that. So, with those ethical concerns mainly put to bed, I am just packing for my trip to the north. I'm buying in the Newcastle area because property values have been pretty flat over the last 10 years, but they are just beginning to rise. So I hope I'm getting in at the beginning of a small boom. I'm also buying up there because there's lots of work, there are lots of transport links, and the town that I have identified to buy in just has a really nice feeling to it. I would like to live there myself. So I have planned my outfits very carefully, because when I do property investment, I feel like I need to create a very professional appearance. I don't want to look like a pushover. I don't want to look too frilly and flouncy, so no florals. And I want to look as though I'm not from family money. Now, I am not from family money. That is very much the case. But I am aware that, especially to people who have a very different accent from me, I can sometimes come across like I'm some kind of member of the landed gentry, and I think that probably puts people's backs up. So I'm going to try to come across as a little rougher than I am. I'm not sure how well that will go. Probably not very well, but I'm going to wear a leather jacket because I think that might help. So I will continue the story once I am up near Newcastle. Bye-bye for now. Bye-bye. Okay, I am setting off from home for what's theoretically a 4-hour, 15-minute drive. It'll take loads longer than that because I'll want to stop on the way and investigate the northeast, because that's very exciting. It's a really fun drive through the Pennines. So if I have the energy, I will stop the car and show you the beautiful things I might see on the way. Bye! I'm an hour into my drive. I don't have anything beautiful to show you yet because I'm just at Chester Services, but I stopped to get myself a cup of tea. The least friendly lady I've ever been served tea from, I think, which is worrying because I'm trying to be very, very approachable and appealing to people on this trip, and that didn't start well. And while I was stopping, I had a little check to see what my first viewing is. So I'm viewing my first property just a couple of hours after I get to the northeast this afternoon, and it's a 2-bedroom house, freehold, on the market at £80,000. So it looks like a pretty good deal. It's very well photographed, which might just mean that it's nowhere near as good as it looks, but it does look like it's just ready to move into based on the pictures. It's been on the market for a month. just over a month. That's a newer property than I would like it to be. I'd rather be viewing properties that have been on the market kind of 3 months plus, but there's not an awful lot of choice, so I'm going to view it. The reason I'm worried about it having only been on the market a little while is there might still be some owner-occupier interest, but I'll find out. I always just ask the estate agent, and I'm excited to see it because it looks really, really nice, and 80,000 is definitely within my budget. So I will update you later. Bye. Everyone knows it's colder up north, but bloody hell, it's so cold. And I couldn't wear more clothes, even though I knew it would be quite cold, because my air conditioning has broken in my car and I haven't got time to fix it. So I needed to travel in a tiny, tiny dress, but now I'm here. It is an abomination of coldness. I think sleet's coming down. How concerning. Anyway, I'm about to go to my Airbnb and check in, and I've got 2 hours to get settled before my first viewing. And I think I might put on some warmer clothes, not least because cleavage is not part of my strategy for how I look when I'm doing property investment. I've arrived in Newcastle area in this little town. It's so cold. Not brought warm enough clothes. Well, I think maybe I've brought warm enough clothes if I layer, so I'm going to. And I've just realised that I have slightly messed up my schedule, so I need to move one of my bookings a little bit because I've got 2 bookings that are too close together and I think it's going to be stressy trying to get between them. So I'm going to call one of the agencies and see if I can do that, because I get very scared about being late for people. Hello, my name's I've got 2 viewings with you tomorrow, and I just wondered if I might be able to move one of them by a little bit of time, please. Brilliant. All right, thanks very much. Bye. Things are selling fast. I've got 7 properties to view, and 2 of them have had offers on them. So things are moving quite fast because I only made these bookings a week ago. I've certainly searched in areas before where the market hasn't seemed anywhere near this hot. Makes it quite exciting. So I'm outside the first property I'm going to be viewing, and it's very interesting because I'm viewing in a very small town, so all the drives between the properties are like 2 minutes long, 3 minutes long, 4 minutes long, no longer than that. So it is a very compact area, but the difference between how safe it feels is very dramatic. So I've just arrived at this one and I already know I'm not buying a property here. If I lived here, I would feel scared. There's a boarded up pub that looks like it's not been open in a very long time, so that would be your local pub, and it's shut. Like, why is it shut? I've just driven down the road the actual property is on, and there is this amazing truck that's parked up, and it's been taken over by ivy, so it looks like something out of the Day of the Triffids. And what I always look for when I'm looking at an area is I look at the quality of the cars. So it's not like I need everyone to have some sort of new fancy car, but cars that aren't running are a sign that the location isn't perhaps the most salubrious. It's not really an area people are queuing up to live in. That's always awkward because now I could just cancel the viewing now, but I'm here and the estate agent will be arriving any minute, and so obviously it's just rude to cancel, but it means that you have to go through this kind of charade of pretending to be interested when you're not, and I'm sure that a good estate agent can tell it's awkward. But fortunately they're showing me more properties, so it's not like I have to pretend I'm going to really like this one and make an offer, because there are other opportunities tomorrow. They are viewing 2 more properties with me, so I'm going to go and get this role play out of the way. Oh yes, it's nice. Oh no. I'm back from my first viewing, and that was an absolute 100% definite no. The roof needed serious attention. Just one of the worst things is the owner was showing me round. My favourite thing is when an estate agent shows me round and I don't have to meet the owner, because it's just so much easier because you can be so much more frank. And I felt so bad for them because they seemed like a lovely family and they have done everything to the inside of the house. It's beautifully presented and none of it matters because it's in a location that the owner would have no control over. Like, there's nothing you can do about a shut down, boarded up pub with a whole load of broken windows just behind your house. There's nothing you can do about that. There's nothing you can do about just litter in the area and like burned out cars. There is nothing you can do. You can make the inside of the house beautiful, and they deserve a buyer, and it can't be me, and it makes me feel just like I would love to solve that problem for them or help them solve that problem, and I can't because it doesn't make sense. I'd forgotten that this is always such an emotional roller coaster, because compared to my day job, which is making like custom videos for people, and it feels quite high stakes at the time. I always want the video to come out well and the customer to be happy. But like being able to move house and buy the house that you want to is a really big deal. And so they've got a house they want to buy and they need to sell their house. And with the way their neighbourhood currently looks, I'm not sure if they're going to be able to do that. And that just feels awful. Anyway, so onwards and upwards. I've got high hopes for tomorrow because I'm viewing most of the properties I'm going to be looking at tomorrow. And so I hope one of them might be the one. I always feel as though when I'm doing property investment, I should wear a low heel. I don't really know why. I don't wear heels in normal life. I wear high heels as a model. But when I'm doing this particular job, the flat heel doesn't have enough authority and a high heel maybe makes me look like a cross-dresser because it's not really a daytime look. So I go for a low heel. I only buy one house a year, if that. And so I tend to forget in the interim how much estate agents love the phone. I don't know why. So I'd never make phone calls. I absolutely hate them. I love to do everything by email. And I try to do everything by email when I'm doing property investment. It just does not work. Like you email them, they phone you back. It's excruciating, especially if I get as far as making an offer. I hate doing that on the phone. I just feel like it's embarrassing, and also offers should just be in writing. And then they just phone you back. Oh God, it's so awkward. Anyway, I'm just off to view my first property of the day and I'm scared because it's actually probably my favourite. And I'm scared. On paper, it's my favourite, and I'm scared that once I actually get there, I'll discover that it isn't my favourite and it shouldn't be my favourite. And I don't think I'm really emotionally stable enough for property investment because I just get quite emotionally involved, which is not wise. And I'm worried because I made the appointment for this viewing before I noticed. I just noticed this last night. I read through all the paperwork again, and there's a covenant on the property, which means that there is some additional rule that's been imposed on it by probably the people who built the block of flats. So that could be anything. It could be you can't work from home. It could be, like, sometimes there's a morality clause. And what I'm worried in this situation that it might be is that you might not be able to let it out. Now, hopefully the estate agent would have picked up on that because I am buying in order to let out, but I'm worried that possibly it might not be available for what I want to do with it. So I'm trying not to get too excited and hopeful because there's a really good chance that this covenant will stop me being able to buy it for my purposes. Anyway, I'm off. I have to wear the same dress as yesterday. I've got 3 outfits for my 3 days of property investment, but it's too cold to wear my other 2 choices. So I'm stuck in this one, which doesn't give me joy, but at least I like the dress. I just feel like you'll be thinking I've got rather low standards. Anyway, I will update you. I'm outside my second viewing, the one I have the high hopes for, and it is a really nice area. So I have not been in this little village just outside the town I'm viewing in before, but it has lovely views. It's up on a hill, which is great, so the actual property has lovely far-reaching views, and the area, it's so close to yesterday's area, but it just feels completely different. No broken down cars. Everything just looks like there is a functioning community here. Everything's open. The local pub looks like it functions like a normal pub. There are churches that look like they've got stuff properly going on. There's no litter, so it's much more hopeful, which means that I'll be much more sad if I can't buy it. I will let you know in a minute. Oh, I have such high hopes. Thanks for listening. Bye. I am back from my first viewing of today and I loved it. I wrote, it is sheer perfection. It is sheer perfection. It has been newly renovated, so it's perfect. Everything's lovely. And the covenant on it, the estate agent didn't know the answer as to what the covenant was, but she knew it wasn't a rule against letting it out. So if no one buys it before I do, I am very likely to make an offer on it. I shouldn't make an offer until after I've done my last viewing because that feels premature and wrong, but it's quite exciting because if I bought that, that would be a great result. That would give me the return on investment that I'm looking for if I can get it for the price that I think I can. So it's on the market at 75,000, so it's the cheapest property I'm viewing, or offers above 75,000, so I might need to go a bit beyond 75, but probably not much. So that was remarkably easy. It's the only flat I was viewing. Everything else on this trip is a house, and because I've bought all flats before, I do feel like I understand them a bit better. The lease length is fine, the management fee and the ground rent are fine. Those are 2 things you have to factor in that you don't have to do when you buy houses normally. It just looks great. I would definitely like to live there myself, which is always what I'm looking for. That might have been easier than I thought it was going to be, or it might all become incredibly difficult because if someone else makes an offer on it and if they're an occupier, I will have to bow out. So we will see. Oh my God, I'm so confused. I've just done my third viewing and it's in an area that I've heard some people say is like the best area and some people say it's not the best area. Seems absolutely fine. Maybe not quite as gentrified as the flat this morning, but like absolutely fine. I wouldn't feel scared living here myself. And the house is a 3-bedroom actual house, not a flat. But it's on the market for the same price as the flat I saw this morning. So I thought there must be something super duper wrong with it because that's not normal. You normally can't buy more accommodation for the same price as something with less accommodation. It would rent out for £150 a month more than the flat I saw this morning. It does need work, needs some roof work, which will probably be about 10 grand, and it needs repainting, but I love that job. Oh my God. So on paper, if you just look at the numbers, this would be the one to buy. So that threw me a bit because I was expecting there would be something terribly wrong with it. So I thought once I turned up, I would notice that the area was like really, really dodgy as fuck, and it's not. And then I realised, okay, so if the area isn't dodgy, the property's going to be dodgy, and it's just not. It's been recently renovated, so it's got a modern kitchen and modern bathroom. It just needs some roof work as far as I can see. So that's great. I mean, it's a really nice problem to have because now I've viewed 3 properties and 2 of them I would be just totally delighted to buy. So wow, I'm a bit thrown. Oh my God, I love this. When it's going well, I love this. Horrible, horrible, smelled so bad, so bad. Black mould everywhere and a giant like bush in front of the front door. Awful. Hooray, don't have to buy that one. And someone's already made an offer on it anyway, so I don't feel guilty. Oh, thank God. But the next property I'm viewing, I've just found out, will be conducted by the owner. Oh, I hate that. I always want to be able to buy their houses. I don't like seeing hope in people's eyes. I think I should stop having such a saviour complex. I mean, I'm not the only buyer in the northeast. They will be fine without me, for God's sake. This is the very exciting and scary bit. I'm just putting numbers into my spreadsheet to be sure I'm right about this before I make an offer. The price is the same for either the 2-bed flat or the 3-bedroom house, but the rent is £150 a month different, which just makes a really, really big difference. The gross yield is 12% instead of 9.6%, which is massive, and it would make it my best performing property. My second best performing property, because one of them was super duper cheap and has ended up going up massively rent-wise. Anyway, so now what I need to do is phone the estate agent and make an offer, and this is awkward. So I know this property hasn't been on the market that long, but the price of it was reduced a month ago. So that means that the seller would have originally been hoping for more than what it's now on the market at, which is 75,000. So I think probably I'll need to pay the asking price to get it, honestly, and I don't think that would be a stupid thing to do. But I promise myself never to offer the asking price, to always force myself to negotiate, because it's really uncomfortable and I want to be good at this. I want to keep getting better at this, and one of the ways of getting better is by doing the bits that you find uncomfortable. So I was tempted at first to make an offer of 74,000, so only 1,000 under, but they're just going to reject it, and then I'm going to say, all right, 75,000, and that would have been a pointless thing. I would feel just like I was insulting them if I went in at like 70,000, for example. So I think what I'll do is I'll offer 72,000 with the hope of finishing off at 74,000, which will still have saved me £1,000, which was all hard-earned money. So I'm going to give that a go. I'm going to write it down because I'm not very good at numbers, and when I panic, I tend to forget what I've said, and I shot myself in the foot a bit by being too friendly with the really nice estate agent this morning and saying I was really shocked by how cheap it was, which was a very stupid thing to say, because now I can't be like, oh, I need it to be cheaper. I mean, I can, but I don't think it will sound very realistic. Anyway, let's give it a go, because that's my job, and it's tricky because I know what I should try to say is, oh my goodness, well, it'll need a lot of work, but I don't want to pretend that I don't think it's a really lovely property. There's always the possibility of calling the wrong agent, which I've done before, because of viewing lots in one go. It's easy to get a bit bamboozled. Oh God, I'm not brave. I'm not very brave. Hello, my name's I viewed a property with you this afternoon, which is and I was phoning up to make an offer, please, if I may. I would like to put forward 72,000, please. It'll be with cash. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye, bye. Okay, I did it, and I didn't explain myself, which I was tempted to do, so I'm quite proud of that. My offer was accepted. This has never happened to me before. I have never had my first offer ever accepted before. If I was going to be cynical, I would say that's because I didn't offer low enough, but I don't care. It's a really good price. I care not at all. Oh my God. It's so worth it doing all of this. This is the best moment in the whole thing. After this, everything becomes complicated and horrible and legal. But it's just the best feeling. So my offer of £72,000 has been accepted. That is remarkably cheap for a 3-bedroom house. Even though it needs roof work, it's still remarkably cheap for rent of £750 a month. Like, that's really, really good deal. Well, what an eventful and, I think, successful couple of days. I came up here to buy a house. I have made an offer on the house and it's been accepted. There's still plenty that can go wrong because in the UK, nothing is really legally binding at this point. No money exchanges hands yet. I have to get a survey, and assuming the survey is broadly okay, I will plan to go ahead, but the seller could pull out. I could find out that there's something else wrong with the house. All sorts of things can happen. So I don't want to assume it's going to go ahead, but there's a pretty good chance. Over 50% of the houses I've got this far with have gone all the way through to purchase, so I'm fairly optimistic. So, to summarise, this is why I chose the one that I did. It's the one that on paper has the largest yield. So for this property, I'll be spending £72,000 to get a £750 a month rent from it. For one of the properties I already own, I had to spend £127,000 to get the same return every month in terms of rent, and one of my other properties was £80,000 for what is now a £750 rent, but I bought it back in 2017. So getting that amount of rent for a property that has cost me £72,000 in 2025 seems like a very good result. I am very grateful and very hopeful about that, because my hope was that as I got more experienced as a property investor, I would make better choices. And this is, at least on paper, a better choice than probably any of the other properties I've bought so far, which is pretty exciting. The flat that I really liked, that was also on the market at £75,000, would have rented out at £600 a month, which wouldn't be bad at all. But of course, in comparison, on paper, the house that I'm buying is far, far, far better in terms of yield than the flat. And actually, someone else made an offer on the flat today. The estate agent phoned me to let me know, so I don't feel guilty about not buying it. It will still be fine. It will fulfill its destiny of having people living in it, which is great because it's beautiful. One thing to bear in mind when you're going for fairly high yielding properties, as I am with this purchase, is that they are often in places where the capital growth is likely to be fairly slow and fairly low. It looks like this area is one of those areas. According to the estate agent, it's not really a popular area for owner-occupiers. So if I try to sell this property on in 5 years' time, for example, which I doubt I'll want to do, but just in case I did, I probably won't see that it's shot up in value, and it will probably be on the market for a while before anyone offers on it, unless the area changes a lot fairly quickly. Personally, that's fine with me. I tend to go for a higher yield over more capital growth, but I have purchased some houses that have had really significant capital growth and will probably have more. So I feel like I've spread my risk to an acceptable level, and I don't feel worried by the fact it's in an area where people tend to rent rather than buy, because I think unless the tax situation changes radically, if I want to sell this property on in 10 years' time, there will probably be people like me, buy-to-let landlords, who will be interested in it. It also makes sense that I'm now buying a property that needs a bit of work on it, which means I can immediately add to its value by getting roof repairs done, redecorating. I can make it worth a little bit more very quickly. Whereas if I bought the immaculate, newly renovated flat, there is nothing I could have done to make it more valuable. And what I definitely couldn't have done is make it bigger, which is the only thing that would have increased its value. So what I've gone for is not a fancy house. It's not like a glamorous purchase, but I would have been happy to live in it when I was renting. I would still be happy to live in it now. So ethically, I feel okay with it. Almost the best bit emotionally is the fact that it does need to be redecorated throughout. But from what I could see, it doesn't need many things that I can't do. Obviously, I cannot do the roof, but it kind of of looked like everything else is stuff I can do. It basically just needs all the walls painted and some external painting, and that is stuff that not only can I do, but I love it. So it means that I get to come up here again, hopefully in a few months' time when the purchase has gone through, and paint everything. And I never really feel like I deserve any of my properties until I've put my hands on it and made it look better. That feels like a kind of important part of the ritual that makes me feel like I'm going to look after this property in a reasonable way, and I'm going to look after the tenants who move into it in a reasonable way. It's like a kind of promise to myself. The other best bit about doing this is that every time I go through this process, and this is the 7th time, if it succeeds, that I will have done the whole process and ended up with a house at the end of it, I always learn new stuff. So I went to a cafe earlier and thought about what I've learned from this process so far, and here I have what I've learned. I have learned not to be afraid of walking away from a deal that starts to go bad, even in a rising market, because 6 months ago I made an offer on a property up here which was quite similar. It was a 3-bedroomed house and I offered 83,000 for it. When the survey was completed, I knew there was a lot of work that needed to be done, so I sort of accounted for maybe £10,000 of renovation stuff, but then I discovered the whole roof needed to be replaced as well, and the seller and I could not come to an agreement about who should pay for how much of that. I thought it should be a 50-50 split, but they did not agree. So I walked away from it in part just because they were quite rude. They were quite abrasive to deal with, and I thought, if they're being like that at this point, think with any other issues that come up through the quite lengthy, potentially, purchase process, I think this relationship could get worse. So it felt more sensible to walk away from it. But I felt not only guilty for doing that, because I'd not done that before as a result of the survey, I also felt like I might have been really foolish, because the market here is beginning to rise. And when I started looking for properties to view again 6 months later on this trip, I realised that there wasn't as much choice within my price range as there had been, because prices had gone up. And so I thought I might have missed the boat, and I might forever be thinking I really should have just swallowed my pride and let the seller of the previous house kind of win the argument about who should pay for most of the roof. And I now realise that even though the market has been rising, it was still the right thing to do, because 6 months later I've actually got what looks like, at least pre-survey, a much better deal, because it's £11,000 less. So even if it needs the same amount of money spent on it, I will still be ahead. I've also learned that it is definitely worth viewing properties that look suspiciously cheap. I almost didn't book a viewing for this property because I just assumed there must be something terribly wrong with it. And it looks like I was just wrong. I just wasn't sensitive enough to the market to realise that that specific area was, to my mind, rather undervalued. So I'm very glad that I went ahead and viewed it, even though I thought I was going to be walking into some sort of absolute monstrosity or some sort of legal nightmare, and it doesn't appear that that's actually been the case. I've learned to cancel bookings rather than to experience the awkwardness of looking around a house and raising people's hopes when I've already made an offer on things. Because one viewing that I did yesterday was after I'd made an offer, although it hadn't been accepted, and I felt horrible doing that. It just felt really dishonest and mean. I don't think that's really fair, but it was really nice to be able to cancel this morning's booking when I had the offer accepted, so I didn't have to go through the charade of looking around someone's house and potentially raising their hopes. So I'll feel more confident in doing that in the future, because it does feel like the right thing to do ethically. This is something I already knew, but I have definitely benefited from it this time round, and that is to ask estate agents questions and ask them questions that feel inappropriately nosy. So I tend to do this to make it more comfortable for myself and maybe make them more likely to respond. I try to give them quite a lot of information about myself, so I'll try to be generous with information, explain the situation I'm in, explain like why I'm buying in this area, just give them personal details about my life if it feels appropriate, because I've found out that then it seems like they're a bit more comfortable giving away more information themselves. I mean, some won't and some will. So I found out about the area where I'm now buying being very rental only from an estate agent who I hope I made feel comfortable enough to be quite forthcoming, although maybe she just always is. She seemed like a really nice person. I found out that no sales had fallen through at the survey stage with one of the properties, which was really useful information to have, and me, a of 7 years ago wouldn't have dared to ask that, I don't think. I had my rental estimations confirmed because I had the courage to ask, which once upon a time I was too embarrassed to ask because I thought it made me look ignorant to look like I didn't know. This time round, I also found out where some of the estate agents lived in terms of the area. And that was just really useful because an estate agent obviously knows the area really well and has proper market information. So I guess they wouldn't choose generally to live in an area that was really bad. And so the property I'm buying is in an area that one of the estate agents I met yesterday lives in herself. And that did give me some reassurance because she was a young professional. And I thought, okay, well, if it's good enough for her, then it's probably good enough for me. So that was really useful. And if I can, I always ask why the previous occupant, whether they're the seller or the person renting, why they're leaving the property, because sometimes you can find out some really useful stuff that way. People can be remarkably forthcoming just when, I guess, faced with a direct question. And it makes me feel a bit of an interrogator to ask, but it is so useful to actually have face-to-face time with the people that you're going to negotiate with. It can be really helpful. I've also, on this trip, I've narrowed down the types of property that I will view. So in the past, I viewed quite a lot more properties than I've done on this trip. And there have been several properties that were just filler that I was kind of viewing just in case, rather than because I actually thought that they would stack up. Now, obviously, I've said that it was actually really good that I viewed a property that I was quite suspicious of, but previously I've viewed maybe quite a lot of similar properties, none of which really fitted what I was looking for in terms of yield. And I think I have got a bit more sophisticated at just not doing that, not wasting everyone's time. And that has felt better on this trip. I've not felt like I've been walking into a lot of properties with basically very little intention of making an offer. Definitely on this trip, I have also reiterated for myself that it's really, really good to go and sit in a cafe or a restaurant near to the property that you're considering buying and just pay attention to the people who come in and out, what kind of things they're talking about, like how they're dressed, how happy they look, just to get some sense of the kind of people who live in that area, just to see what kind of people will be the neighbours of your tenant, what kind of people your tenant might be, just to get a sense of whether they are people who scare you to death, which has occasionally happened, or whether they're people you feel like, I think I could do business with these people. So, yep, I like that, doing a bit of profiling. And on this trip specifically, I factored in the fact that the property had recently been reduced when I made the offer, because the last time I made an offer, it was a rather similar situation. The property had been on the market for more and it had been reduced to 85,000. Then I made an offer of 80,000 and we eventually agreed on 83,000. But in the process, I discovered that really, although the seller had accepted the offer, I think they quite resented it because they were still thinking that it was worth what it had originally been on the market for. So this time, because I knew that the property I was offering on had also just been reduced, I wasn't quite so ambitious with the offer I made because I just felt I really don't want to be dealing with a seller again who resents me for having pushed too hard to get a bargain. And I do feel like maybe I've achieved that this time because we've not had to go back and forth multiple times. Now that might be just because I've been naive this time, but I hope that maybe it's just that I've learned to be a bit more sensitive to the journey that the seller has already been on, because it must be horrible having your property valued at, say, £80,000, then a few weeks or months later the estate agent suggests you drop it by £5,000, because that £5,000 just evaporates. That was money that you would have had to spend on whatever you wanted to spend it on, including potentially your next home, and it's suddenly just gone. So I think I have learned that maybe sometimes the best way to succeed is not to be really too cutthroat with the offers you make. So I'm hoping that will mean that we can stay really positive in the rest of negotiations, and if anything difficult comes up, perhaps they will have a little bit more goodwill towards me than the previous sellers that I tried to negotiate with. And I hope so, because I heard someone very clever and very entrepreneurial a few years ago say that a good deal is when everyone feels like they've got a good deal. It's not when one of you feels like you've been screwed over and the other one feels like they've managed to screw someone over. And so I hope maybe this time I've achieved that. So I hope you found that that useful. Especially, I hope you find it useful if you are going through or planning to go through a similar process, or if you are looking to buy a house for yourself. I know my strategies are maybe a little different because my priorities are different, but I know the first time I bought a flat, I felt very much at sea because a lot of the people that you'll know in your life have only done this process once or twice. So I'm really hoping this might be some help to some people, and I very much enjoyed sharing the experience with you. So thank you as always for watching. Please like, subscribe. I will be back with more, maybe a little bit more pornographic and a little bit less about capitalism. But thank you as always for listening. It's goodbye from me. Bye-bye. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.